Hello, 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 and welcome back to Beyond the Hustle podcast, the podcast for building the human that you are behind the business and behind the success. I firstly, can I just say, cannot believe that we're actually into August. I know that we all say it every single month at the start of a new month, but I genuinely cannot believe we're in August. That genuinely just blows my mind. I feel like this year is just going so quickly, and it's been such an incredible year. And honestly, I have some very exciting things coming up for the end of this year, which is just going to, yeah, make the next 6 months go by even quicker, I imagine. But coming into August, I really wanted to make a series for the podcast because I'm seeing the same patterns and the same limitations come up time and time again, whether it's with my clients in our sessions, in the rewire space, and also just in the DMs with the most incredible women who I speak to in the DMs. And that's why I wanted to bring the Money Rewire series over to you guys here, because through the month of August, we are going to be diving into the subconscious patterns shaping your income, your sales, and your success, so that obviously you can increase those, but also so that you can do so whilst feeling financially secure, confident, and actually, no longer avoiding money or feeling anxious or panicked around money. Because yeah, I feel like that is just a massive limitation and a massive problem that I'm seeing with clients and with women in business particularly as well. And it's something that we don't really give enough credit to. People are often, wanting their first 10K month or the first 5K month, or a big 100K year, but you're not often thinking about actually what is needed from a money mindset perspective to actually sustain that and to actually feel good in that. So, before we really get into the first episode, I want to ask you a question, and I want you to allow your first reaction to come out to this. When was the last time that you looked at your business bank account? Not because a payment came in or because a payment went out, but you actually just sat down and looked at your numbers, right? Like your profit, your expenses, your tax bot, your cash flow. And if your stomach just dropped or you thought, oh shit, this episode is for you. And to preface as well, this isn't because you're bad with money and this isn't to make you feel like you are bad with money. It's because I want to highlight what money avoidance is actually showing you, which is that somewhere along the way, your brain learned that money equals stress. And that is something to be afraid of. So, this is why you feel stressed around, investments, panicked around expenses or invoices, and probably why you actually feel like less successful than you actually are. And that's a massive problem that I see as well, is a lot of us are often not celebrating the success we actually do have and thinking, I have conversations with my clients going, oh, I only made 4K or I only made 6K. And I'm like, what do you mean you only made that? Your business turned over that in the last month. That's freaking incredible. There's a past version of you who actually longed for that. And you're sitting here and going, I only had that. No, 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 no. But I digress. When it comes to avoiding money, people often don't realize that they're actually avoiding money. Okay. It's a subconscious habit. So, and some excuses and reasons I've heard before as to why they want to avoid money is I want to create an abundant mindset, or I already know my numbers. When I'm sorry, you don't. You might think you know your numbers, but unless you're actually looking at them and seeing them, you don't. So, I'm going to give you some examples of what avoiding money actually looks like, so you can start to understand where it is silently coming into play and silently also running the show behind the scenes. Let me just interrupt this episode real quickly, because if you're listening to this money mindset series and realizing that the shoe do be fitting, you want the abundance around money, financial freedom, to be hitting the 10K cash months without worrying that it's going to disappear, to look at your bank account without instantly panicking, and to be able to spend on yourself without feeling guilty, then the Rewire coaching space is for you. Because this is the only strategic subconscious led space that actually focuses on rewiring your money mindset to elevate your business growth sustainably. I'm not talking about positive money affirmations in the mirror. I'm talking doing the deep inner work to remove the emotions and stories around money so you can actually feel safe scaling financially. You will gain access to an in-depth audit to begin your journey, countless live calls and trainings on all things money mindset, visibility, scaling without burnout, as well as strategic one-to-one support to ensure you're always moving forwards instead of remaining stagnant. And when you join from this podcast series, you will also gain an extra one-to-one call with me to rewire your biggest money limitation on the spot. And if this sounds like a bit of you, then slide into my DMs and let's chat, or hit the link in the episode notes to inquire, and let's scale you and your business sustainably. Now let's get back to the episode. So some examples, and these are also kind of just again to preface, these are from clients and past client experiences, okay? So pretending your tax bill doesn't exist. Never checking your profit and profit margin, celebrating revenue but having no idea what you've actually made, putting receipts in a drawer pretending they simply don't exist, never opening your accounting software, whether it's Xero or whatever it may be, never opening it until you probably have to, waiting until January to think about tax when it's literally then due. Obviously, if you're in the UK, tax is due. Like the deadline to pay it is the 31st of January. Waiting until January, you're likely to fuck yourself over with that, right? Not knowing how much you actually need to earn this month or the next month. And I say that as well in being mindful of we don't want to predict, and we also don't want to predict from panic, right? I see a lot of clients coming to me going, oh my God, I need this money next month. I need this for this month. I need this, I need that. And it's like, actually, hold on, you don't. You want that, but you don't actually need that, right? Or predicting clients are leaving, predicting clients are dropping off. And that's why they avoid as well, because the longer that you get to avoid what's happening in your business, or if a client is leaving, what your income will be and whatnot, like the longer you get to avoid panic, right? Avoiding your Stripe dashboard unless a payment comes through. And also never setting income goals, right? And again, like this, you're probably going to do one or the other. You're probably going to set really big income goals, or you're probably going to set none, right? Now, in the moment, none of these like actions necessarily feel like avoidance. They feel like obviously protecting yourself, or they feel like maybe something that's like, well, I can't be bothered doing this, right? But every single time that you avoid your money, you're teaching your brain that money is actually something to fear. Your brain literally has one job, and that is to keep you safe. So your subconscious doesn't care about your goal to reach your first 5K month or your first 10K month or your goal to go on holiday and spend without stressing. Your subconscious does not care. Your subconscious has one goal, and that is to protect you from anything that you fear. So if you have ever associated money with stress, panic, fear, overwhelm, arguments, debt, uncertainty, shame, your subconscious doesn't know how to separate those experiences from your business in this moment or any moment. It literally learns and decides that money isn't safe. It doesn't separate. It does not separate the experiences. So what does it obviously do instead? It avoids it, because that's an immediate way to feel safer, right? And I say this to my clients all the time. I've probably said this on the podcast before, right? But if you're going to go jump out of a plane and you back out at the last minute, jumping out of the plane the next time doesn't feel any safer. The only way that you feel safe is by not doing it, right? Whereas obviously if you follow through and you have a great time and then you're like, oh, it was good, it was fine, right? But like I said, every time you avoid your money, you're teaching your brain that money is something to fear. The same way that every time you avoid jumping out of that plane, you're teaching your brain that jumping out of the plane is something to fear. And I know that it obviously is, but bear with me, okay? You understand me. And every time that like your brain associates money with fear, every time that fear is strengthened, money feels harder to hold. And the reason that money feels harder to hold is because money avoidance actually creates problems that you likely don't see. This is where things like emotional decision making comes in. You know, panic launches come in, discounting and panic selling to people to get more numbers in, saying, yes to clients that aren't actually aligned, or never investing confidently with like a fuck yes behind your investment, or maybe you're constantly feeling behind or thinking that you're broke when you're actually holding a decent profit, right? I had a client who worked with me earlier this year who kept saying, I want to earn 4K MRR, I want to earn 5K months, I want to like get back up to the 4K MRR. She spent ages, and every single time we said, look your numbers, look your numbers, look your numbers. The moment she looked at her numbers, she realized she'd actually been hitting that for the past 3 months, right? But she was telling herself that she was, not broke, but she was telling herself that she wasn't earning this when actually she was. And that was because of her avoidance. You also might then also feel like every sale determines like your survival as a business owner, right? So this is what money avoidance creates and then literally like thrives on and feeds on. And I know that all of us desperately want avoidance, but you cannot, and I need you to hear me, you cannot build avoidance. No, wait, you cannot build abundance. Let me start again. You desperately want oh my gosh, what is with my words right now? You desperately want abundance, but you cannot build abundance whilst avoiding the very thing you're trying to create. Avoiding it, avoiding money, avoiding numbers is elevating the fear behind money instead of elevating your bank balance, instead of elevating your abundance, instead of elevating your business. And the common mistake I see in my clients who actually crave abundance and wealth is that they associate confident business owners with being really hella organized, right? Confident business owners don't know their numbers because they're naturally organized or because they love accounting and tax and numbers. They know their numbers because they've trained their nervous system that money is safe to look at. And let me tell you, this comes from me firsthand. I hated math in school. The only reason I enjoyed a math lesson was if I was able to listen to my music and simply do algebra. That was it. That was it. And when I first went self-employed 3 years ago, not once did I ever think, I'm so excited to look at my finances. Not once. Instead, I was freaking terrified at the thought of it. I spent 2 years trying to avoid looking at my numbers. I've been self-employed almost 3 years now, right? No, 3 years, yeah. Actually, yeah, 3 years now. Slay. I spent 2 years of that trying to avoid looking at my numbers. The only numbers I cared about was the number going into my bank account and how much I was willing to spend. Now, let me tell you where that got me. Taking 1 grand out of my savings because I didn't put enough money into my tax pot. Taking 1 grand out of my savings because I didn't put enough money into my tax pot because I was avoiding it. I was thinking, oh, this will do, this will be fine. Now, why did that happen? Because I love to pretend the tax would be less than it actually was and pretend it didn't matter until January, which is when it's obviously due to be paid, like I said. So I didn't look at my income across the year and recognize I had hit my first 50K year. I looked solely at what I earned month to month to decide what I would buy for myself. And all of the ways, I'm going to go into that in the next episode around not recognizing my first 50K year and not celebrating that. But if we stick to the money avoidance, all the ways that I avoided money led to me feeling stressed like month to month, right? Panicking at the end of each month because I knew it would mean more bills coming out in the first of each month, then feeling like I wasn't as successful as I knew I could be, and never once recognizing what I had actually earned and what I had actually achieved, right? I never actually allowed myself to really celebrate that. And the reason I wanted to avoid looking at money is simply because I was afraid to. I was afraid that if I looked at my expenses properly, I'd have to rein it in. If I looked at my spending, I was afraid that I'd feel guilty because I shouldn't spend and I should be saving instead. And I was afraid that if I looked at my income, I'd feel like a bad person compared to people around me who were struggling financially. There was so many stories wrapped up around my finances that were running my avoidance. But avoidance, at the end of the day, it wasn't actually protecting me. It was reinforcing the belief that money is unsafe. And I spent that year where I hit my biggest financial year, where I first earned 50K in a year, and I felt terrified of money, and I felt stressed, and I still felt panicked spending, and I still felt, guilty for spending. And the reason is because it strengthened my fear of money, which then backfired later down the line and strengthened it even more. And now 2 years later, every time I choose to look at my numbers, I'm rewiring, well, not 2 years later, a yearish later. Every time I choose to look at my numbers, I'm rewiring that belief that money is unsafe. And what's even funnier is that my weekly money meeting with myself, where I dive into my spending, review my expenses, pay invoices, do all of my reconciling for accounting, that is my favorite meeting to do. That's like my favorite hour of the week, if I'm honest. Like, obviously I love my client session and everything like that, but like behind the business, like in the business. Like in the business, that is my favorite meeting to do. It's my favorite hour. I love looking at numbers despite having hated maths and fearing money for ages. Like, I literally love looking at the numbers. And the reason I'm telling you this is because I really want you to understand that your bank balance isn't creating your anxiety. Your relationship with your bank balance is. The moment you stop treating money like something to fear, you stop making decisions from fear, and that changes everything. Right? The moment you actually start looking up the numbers, it removes the emotional pull that you have, but it also allows you to make decisions with a clear mind. Right? So let me put you onto the weekly money meeting that I swear by, clients swear by, and that will actually increase your income more than selling without looking at numbers ever will. So once a week, whether it's 20 minutes or 30 minutes or an hour, doesn't matter. No fixing in this as well, no judging. I want you to simply observe your bank account, your expenses, your profit, and I want you to look at your income from the last week, your expenses from the last week, both personal and business wise, your profit, so like what you took home in the business, your tax pot and savings, and if you've put money aside or if you need to, the things that you've spent on for you as the business owner, like all of that. Now, what I don't want you to do when looking at these numbers is ask, what do I spend less on? Or attach any guilt to any of the numbers, right? What I want you to ask is, what do these numbers tell me? Right? What did they show you? And beyond the numbers, how did you feel spending through the week? When you tapped your card at the coffee shop, did it feel freeing or heavy? When you put money into your tax pot, did it feel secure or scary? You need to start to recognize what numbers can show you, can highlight, and can open for you, not just what you're choosing to attach to them. So every single week, and I say every single week because a lot of my clients ask, should I do this weekly or monthly? Start with weekly. I would actually just go ahead and say just doing it weekly, because then you have less to, it's going to be less time consuming overall. But every week it's going to build up week by week as well for you. That's more, right? So every week, notice how you feel towards money. Does it feel like an easier meeting to have? Does spending feel a little bit more secure because you have the answers, and also you're slowly removing the guilt? Does it feel easier to invest, easier to say fuck yes investing? Like, what actually feels easier and what feels heavier? Because the two can coexist. But one thing you absolutely cannot continue to do is choose to avoid money while actively chasing more. That's never going to work, because you cannot chase something, you cannot attract something if you fear it deeply at the same time. And everyone knows that the more that, like when it comes to like manifesting and all of that jazz, like the thing that you focus on is what becomes, right? You can consciously focus on wanting 10K months, but if you're subconsciously focusing on panic that you have around spending, the guilt you have around spending, the fear that you have around money and whether you're going to lose it or not, or the fear around taxes, like that's what's going to manifest, because your subconscious controls 95% of everything you do. That means 5% of what you do is conscious, if we put it down into like really simple terms. So that means that when it comes to actually striving and desiring that 10K month, you have to focus on the subconscious. And doing this weekly meeting for myself actually trained my subconscious and actually provided relief. Oh my gosh, there we go, to my subconscious. So that is where I want you to start with. Okay. And okay, I hope that you guys have enjoyed this first episode of the Money Rewire series. Next week, we're going to be diving into the money stories you inherited and how they are running your business and how they are running your life and running the show when it comes to money as well. Every single week, we'll be diving into a different topic, and you will be getting actionable steps so you can move away and actually create that change, because that's something that I deeply believe in. And if you have any questions on this, feel free to slide into my DMs on Instagram. I would love to hear how this is moving for you, and I would love to hear how you feel in your weekly money meeting. If you have any questions on what this should look like as well, or what this could look like, then feel free to also jump in and ask questions. And I will see you all next week. Well, I will speak to you all next week in the next episode.